Hi everyone, welcome to the English classroom. In this video, we are going to learn the chapter When a Sapling is Planted. Actually, this is a speech made by Wangari Maathai on her acceptance of Nobel Prize for Peace in 2004. So, When a Sapling is Planted by Wangari Maathai, it is from the fourth unit, the first chapter from the fourth unit. Okay, before getting into the chapter, I would like to introduce you with a great person from India. You know, Jadhav Malay Payeng. He was born in 1963. He's an environmental activist and forestry worker from Majuli, popularly known as the Forest Man of India. So this man, he was known as the Forest Man of India. You know, what did this man do? Yes, he planted so many trees by the rear bank of Brahmaputra, which grew into a dense forest. That's why he was known as the Forest Man of India. Over the course of several decades, he has planted and tended trees on the sandbar of the river Brahmaputra, running into a forest reserve. So by the bank of Brahmaputra, he planted so many trees and he made the river bank into a forest. So he was known as a Forest Man of India, right? Then the forest called Malay Forest after him is located near Kokilamukhu of Jorhat, Assam, India, and encompasses an area of about 360 acres, 550 hectares. In 2015, he was honored with Padma Shri, the fourth highest civilian award in India. He was born in the indigenous Mysing tribe of Assam. So I wanted just to introduce you to this man. He is known as the Forest Man of India. There are so many people who love the nature, who wanted this environment to exist, who wanted to hand over the world the same way they received from their forefathers to the one who are coming forth, the forthcoming generation. So people like these make this earth a livable one. Okay, anyway, let's learn about the chapter. The role played by trees in maintaining the ecological balance in the modern world is vital. Right? Trees play an important role in making this environment a livable one, ecological balance in the modern world. So read the Nobel Prize acceptance speech by Wangari Maathai, who nurtures a sensitive and a reverential love for nature. She was from a rural area and she had that connection with nature. So she tended the nature because of her love and affection, and she nurtures a sensitive and a reverential love for nature. So it is a speech. The chapter When a Sapling is Planted is a speech about environment, and she talks about the green nature, and it is a Nobel acceptance speech. Okay. And let's know about Wangari Maathai. She is a Kenyan environmental and political activist. In the 1970s, Maathai founded the Greenbelt movement, an environmental non-governmental organization which focused on the planting of trees, environmental conservation, and women's rights. In 1986, she was awarded the Right Livelihood Award, and in 2004, she became the first African woman to receive the Nobel Prize for her contribution to sustainable development, democracy, and peace. When a Sapling is Planted is her Nobel Prize acceptance speech at Oslo in December 10th, 2004. So Wangari Maathai, she is from Kenya, she is an African, and she loved nature, and because of her continuous work for this development, for her contribution to sustainable development and democracy and peace, she was awarded a Nobel Prize for Peace, and she was the first woman to accept this prize from Africa. Okay, then let's get into the chapter now, through the speech. Your Majesty, so as it is a speech, she begins with an introduction like, Your Majesties, Your Royal Highnesses, honorable members of the Norwegian Nobel Committee, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. As the first African woman to receive this prize, I accept it on behalf of the people of Kenya and Africa and indeed the world. I accept this for the women in Kenya and the world. Right. Indeed, and it did the world. I am especially mindful of women and the girl child. I hope it will encourage them to raise their voices and take more space for leadership. So she is talking for women, and she thinks that her stance will help the women to come up with their thoughts. They will raise their voice and they will enjoy more space in leadership. Okay. My inspiration comes from my childhood experiences and observation of nature in rural Kenya. So she got this impression from her life, from her childhood. She was living in the villages of Kenya, right? As I was growing up, I witnessed forests being cleared and replaced by commercial plantations. So as she was growing up, she noticed that the forest has been replaced, it has been cleared, and some new cultivation has been taken place there, and just like a commercial plantation, which destroyed local biodiversity and the capacity of the forest to conserve water. So by doing so, by the deforestation and planting some commercial plantation there, they started to lose the biodiversity. Biodiversity, you all know that, right? In an ecosystem, there are different types of living organisms live, right? Animals, birds, insects, together with the water bodies, trees, plants, like that. So by the deforestation, it became imbalanced, right? Which destroyed the local biodiversity and the capacity of the forest to conserve water in 1977. When we started the greenbelt movement, I was partly responding to the needs identified by rural women, namely lack of firewood and clean drinking water, balanced diet, shelter, and income. So while she started the Greenbelt movement, she was partly addressing the problems faced by the women in her locality. Those were the problems they were facing, was a lack of proper firewood, clean water, and shelter, and balanced shelter and income. So all these were the problems they encountered by the women in that society, and she was trying to address the difficulties by starting the Greenbelt movement. What is Greenbelt movement? The Greenbelt movement is an indigenous, grassroots, non-governmental organization based in Nairobi, Kenya, that takes a holistic approach to development by focusing on environmental conservation, community development, and capacity building. So the main aim of National Greenbelt movement, it was a non-governmental organization which basically focused on the improving the life standard of the people, on environmental conservation, community development, and capacity building. These were the main focus of Greenbelt movement. She started from the grassroots, because grassroots means from the very basic. She started it from the lower class of people, which will be very effective. And throughout Africa, women are the primary caretakers. She identifies that women are the primary caretakers throughout Africa, holding significant responsibility for tilling the land and feeding their families. So the women, they till the land, they prepare the land to be cultivated and feeding their families. It is the women who feed the family. As a result, they are often the first to become aware of environmental damage as resources become scarce and they are incapable of sustaining their families. So as women are the primary caretakers, it is them who understand the difficulties. It is them who are facing the difficulties of actually it is the women who are aware of the environmental damage as a result, as resources become scarce and they are incapable of sustaining their family. They find it difficult to feed their family. They do not get enough firewood, they do not get enough food. Right. So it is the women who understand the difficulties. The women we worked with recounted that unlike in the past, they were unable to meet their basic needs. So when Wangari Maathai met some villagers, she came to know that the people recounted, they explained their situation, that they, unlike in the past, they were unable to meet their basic needs. In past, it was okay for them. They could get their firewood and food and all those things they could get from the surroundings, but nowadays it is very difficult for them. They couldn't get things like this. This was due to the degradation of their immediate environment as well as the introduction of commercial farming, which replaced the growing of household food crops. And this is because of the degradation of immediate environment. So the nearby environment, nearby surroundings has been degraded. Many trees have been cut away, the forest have been demolished, and not only because of that, and they have started planting commercial plantation, which ultimately replace the growing of household food crops. So before, people were cultivating food items for themselves, but by replacing it with commercial plantation, it uprooted their life system there. That's what happened. But international trade controlled the price of the exports from these small-scale farmers, and a reasonable and just income could not be guaranteed. So as the new commercial plantation took place, they found it difficult to get their income, because international trade controlled the price of the exports from these small scale farmers. So these people were cultivating in small scale in their own properties, and it was the international trade that controlled the price. So these people started to receive very meager amount as income, and reasonable and just income could not be guaranteed. So these people who cultivate only in a small area could not get a reasonable and justifiable income. So I came to understand that when the environment is destroyed, plundered or mismanaged, we undermine the quality of our life and that of future generation. So Wangari Maathai understood that by degrading the immediate environment, what happens is we lose this life standard of ourselves, right? We undermine the life standard of people, not only that, that of the future of the coming generation, right? The quality of our life and that of the future generation. So we undermine, we ourselves destroy our own life standard, and at the same time that of the future generation too. Tree planting became a natural choice to address some of the initial basic needs identified by women. So Wangari Maathai understood that by planting so many trees, she can tackle the situation. She can face the adversities that is faced by the women, and also tree planting is simple, attainable, and guarantees successful results within a reasonable amount of time. And she understood that by planting tree, she will get a soon response, and it is very easy, and at the same time it guarantees a quick and a successful result, and it guarantees. So this sustains interest and commitment, and she understood that by planting tree, it will keep the women it keeps the women interested, and they will continue planting trees, and this will surely help them to face the situation and to get some better income and help them to sustain their family. Then together we have planted over 30 billion trees that provide fuel, food, shelter, and income to support our children's education and household needs. So gathering the women in the area, they started to plant trees, and they planted a lot of 30 million trees they planted. It is such a huge amount, huge number of trees they planted, and this helped them to get the fuel. They get firewoods, they get food, they get shelter and income to support our children's education and household needs. So by just planting trees, they could get all these things. So they could solve the problem by just planting trees. Right, because trees provide us everything. Trees provide us food, shelter, firewood, everything, right? So by just planting trees, and it is not a meager amount, it is not a less amount of trees. There were 30 million trees planted by them, and this helped them to get a livelihood and something to support their children's education. The activity also creates employment and improves soil and watersheds. So it is not just incomes, it improves the employment, because so many people get jobs like planting trees and tendering them, watering them, keeping them clean and neat, right? So many people get employment, and it improves the soil and watershed. So by cultivating trees, it helped improve the quality of the soil, and the watersheds also are preserved by planting trees. So it was a fairly good solution for the problems that faced by the environment. Initially, the work was difficult because they were unaware that a degraded environment leads to a scramble for scarce resources and may culminate in poverty and even conflict. So at the beginning, it was difficult because the people didn't understand that by cultivating trees, by planting trees, they can address the problems. Right, because they didn't know that the plundered environment will lead to riots. Right, it will create some kind of scramble, some kind of difficult situation for scarce sources and may scarce resources means lack of resources, and may culminate in poverty and may end up in poverty and even conflict. So if there is poverty, it will lead to conflict, right? Because if someone finds something, the others will go for it, and because only when there is scarcity there will be fight between people, because if there are plenty of things, then nobody will go for what one the other has already gained, right? So as there will be scarcity, it will lead to conflict, poverty, and eventually for conflict. They were also unaware of the injustice of international economic arrangements, and the people, they were not aware of the injustice, because the international trade gave the price for the small scale agriculture that was cultivated by the small group of people, right? So international trade, they give the price for all the people, same price, and at the same time these people work harder than the others, harder than the bigger estates, right? So it was injustice as for them. So they were not aware that this kind of habit, this kind of activity can meet their difficulties, can address their problems. They were not aware of it. So in the beginning, she had to face some difficulties. Later, they became aware of the widespread destruction of the ecosystem, especially through deforestation. So later, they all came to know that a great deal of the ecosystem has been destructed, especially through deforestation. So climatic instability and contamination of the soil and waters all contributed to the excruciating poverty and subsequent riots. So the climatic instability, the climate was not stable, there was a frequent change in the climate, and contamination of the soil, the pollution of the soil and water, all contributed to excruciating poverty. Unbearable poverty was the excruciating means unbearable poverty, and subsequent riots and the following riots. So as I said, if there is poverty, it is sure to lead to riots and even worse, right? Because there is only limited resources and there are so many people who need it. So eventually it will lead to riots. So it was the situation anyway. Although initially the Greenbelt movement tree planting activities did not address the issues of democracy and peace, it soon became clear that responsible governance of the environment was impossible without a democratic space. So in the beginning, the Greenbelt movement didn't focus on democracy, didn't address the issue of democracy and peace. They were just trying to find a resolution for the problems faced by the women. But later they came to know that it soon became clear that responsible governance of the environment was impossible without democratic space. So if you want to govern, if you want to manage the situation, if you want to govern the plantation, there should be some kind of democratic space. The democracy should be followed, and so the Greenbelt movement started to give space for democracy too. Therefore, the tree became a symbol for the democratic struggles in Kenya. So as they started to give democracy as also a space in their Greenbelt movement, nowadays the tree became a symbol of democratic activities there in Kenya. Citizens were mobilized to challenge the widespread abuse of power, corruption, and environmental mismanagement in time. The tree also became a symbol for peace and conflict. So there were corruption and mismanagement and abuse of power. So citizens were mobilized, they were organized in group and to fight against the challenge. To challenge the widespread abuse of power and corruption and environmental mismanagement. And in times, the trees also became a symbol of peace and conflict resolution. So nowadays, tree serves as the symbol of peace and conflict resolution, especially during ethnic conflicts, especially during a racial conflict, using trees as a symbol of peace in keeping with a widespread African tradition. And it has been a tradition, it has been a part of their life that to keep the tree as a symbol of peace. Okay, for example, the elders of the Kikuyu carried a staff from the tigi tree that when placed between two disputing sides caused them to stop fighting and seek reconciliation. So these people, the elders of the Kikuyu is a tribal people, then if there is some dispute, some fight, some quarrel between two group of people, if they place the stick there, this means they have to stop fighting and they have to seek reconciliation. They have to come to some peaceful situation through discussion or something like that. So tree has become the symbol of peace and a resolution, a solution for a conflict. Okay, such practices are part of an extensive cultural heritage which contributed both to the conservation of habitats and to the cultures of peace. So by doing so, tree has played a major role. It has been a part of their culture. This practice has been a part of their extensive cultural heritage which contributed the conservation of habitats. So as the tree has an immense role in their culture, this served to the conservation of habitats, at the same time to the culture of peace. Right, so trees are not just for planting, not just for food, not just for getting firewood, and at the same time it has some cultural importance too, because it helps them, it is a symbol of peace and resolution, and so that's why this habit, this practice led them to conservation of habitat and at the same time conservation of their culture and peace. Excellencies, friends, ladies and gentlemen, as this is a speech, she continues, right? It is 30 years since we started this work. They have been planting trees for 30 years. Activities that devastate the environment and societies continue unabated. And so many people, if some people start to plant trees, some others are trying to plunder, right? They always do that. Activities that devastate the environment and societies continue unabated without any stop, continue unabated means without any stop, unabated, continuously it followed. Today we are faced with a challenge that calls for a shift in our thinking so that humanity stops threatening its life support system. So now we call for, we demand, we declare, today we are faced with a challenge that calls for a shift. So nowadays we face challenges and we have to make a change, we have to make a shift in our thinking so that humanity stops threatening its life support system. Human people, they are plundering, they are threatening their own life support system. We people threaten, we demolish, we destroy our own life support system, and we have to think, we have to make a shift in this case. We have to change. We are called to assist the earth to heal her wounds and in the process heal our own. So we have to try to heal the wound of the earth. We have to heal her wound. By doing so, we heal our own wounds too. And in the process, heal our own indeed, to embrace the whole of the creation in all its diversity, beauty, and wonder. So we have to preserve the world. We have to preserve the earth in its beauty, with all its animals, trees, and insects. Having all these things together, we have to preserve this earth here. This will happen only if we see the need to revive our sense of belonging to a larger family of life with which we have shared our evolutionary process. So this will happen. So we will preserve the world only if we think what? Only if we see the need to revive our sense of belonging to a larger family. We should know that we are not just a small thing. We are a part of a bigger thing. Right, revive our sense of belonging to a larger family. We, along with all the animals, insects, trees, we belong to a larger family of life with which we have shared our evolutionary process. So our evolutionary process took place with all the other things. So we are just a part of the other things. There can be no peace without equitable development. Without reasonable development, there won't be any peace. There should be development, not just development, a reasonable development should be there. And there can be no development without sustainable management of the environment in a democratic and peaceful space. So if we need some reasonable development, there should be sustainability should be there. There should be sustainable management of the environment. The environment should be managed. It should remain. It should be sustainable, right? Sustainable means that exists, that remains, right? A sustainable management of the environment in a democratic and peaceful space. In a democratic way, everybody should contribute for the conservation of the environment. This shift is an idea whose time has come. So this change, this shift is an idea and its time has come. We have to make this change. We have to move to this way of life. Its time has come. In the course of history, there comes a time when humanity is called to shift to a new level of consciousness, to reach a higher moral ground, and a time when we have to shed our fears and give hope to each other. That time has now arrived. So in history, sometimes some particular times come when it is the peak time we have to do that. Right, now it is the time we have to make a change in our thought system, right, and we have to preserve the nature, and the time has come. In history, there comes a time when humanity is called to shift. Humanity is asked to make a change in their life system to a new level of consciousness, to reach a higher moral ground. So now we have to make a change in our thought system, and we have to reach a higher moral ground. And now it is the time we have to shed our fears. We have to remove our fears and give hope to each other. We should give others hope to others, and that time has now arrived. Now we have to think. Now we have to act. Now we have to help each other to think their way. Share hope. Don't be afraid. Right? Just help others, hope, and unanimously we can work for preservation of the nature and the environment. I call on world leaders to expand democratic space and build fair and just societies that allows the creativity and energy of the citizens to flourish. So I call on the leaders. I request, I expect, I hope, help, support from the leaders to expand the democratic space and build fair and just societies that allow the creativity and energy of their citizens to flourish. So let them thrive, let them grow up, let the citizens' thought and energy, that creativity flourish. Let's expand the space of democracy. I would like to call on young people to commit themselves to activities that contribute towards achieving their long-term dreams. I call on the younger people to commit themselves to activities, to dedicate themselves to activities that contributes towards their achieving their long-term goals. So you have a goal, you have so many goals to achieve, you work hard for it, you dedicate yourself, you dedicate your time and health to achieve your dream. They have the energy and creativity to shape a sustainable future. So the younger people, they have the ability, they have the creativity and energy to shape a sustainable future. So the development will be possible only by keeping the environment sustainable, by the sustainable management of the environment. So I hope this will take place from the part of the younger people too. To young people, I say you are a gift to your communities and indeed the world. You are our hope and our future. So the young community is our hope. It is our future. So we expect, we hope they will do the needful to preserve this environment and to hand over with its beauty and diversity to the coming generations too. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, I reflect on my childhood experience when I would visit a stream next to our home to fetch water for my mother. So Wangari Maathai recounts, she remembers an incident from her childhood days when she would go to a nearby stream to fetch some water for her mother. I would drink water straight from the stream. So she used to drink the water straight from the stream because it was dark, pure, crystal clear water, and it was pure too. There was nothing polluting the water. Playing among the arrowroot leaves, I tried in vain to pick up strands of frogs' eggs, believing that they were beads. So there were frog eggs there in the water. You may have seen it looks like a string made of beads, right? So thinking that it is beads, she would try to pick them up and pick up the strands of frogs' eggs, believing they were beads. But every time I put my little finger under them, they would break. So whenever I try to pick them up, I see the strand broken, right? They would break. Later, I saw thousands of tadpoles. Later, after some days, I saw thousands of tadpoles, black, energetic, and wriggling through the clear water against the background of the brown earth. So after some days, when I come to the same stream, I noticed that there were thousands of tadpoles wriggling through the water against the brown earth. And everything can be seen. The water was that crystal clear without having any pollution, right? the background of the brown earth. This is the world I inherited. This is the world I inherited from my parents. So this was the world I inherited. I saw all these things there in the stream. It was dark clear. Even the black beads of the frog's eggs also can be seen. And even the strings, the strand of the egg also was seen. But what happens in the course of time today, over 50 years later, the stream has dried up. Women walk long distances for water, which is not always clean. Nowadays, women have to walk a long distance to fetch water, and even after walking this distance, the water that they get is not that clean. And children will never know what they have lost. They do not know what they have lost. They don't have an idea about the eggs, the frog's egg and the strand, how it looks like. They do not have any idea. The challenge is to restore the home of the tadpoles and give back to our children a world of beauty and wonder. So the challenge that I take up, and the challenge that I want each one of you, each one of the world leaders want to take up, is to get back the world that we have lost. We have to make the house, we have to restore the house of the tadpoles, let them live there, and we have to show our children this is the world, this is the beauty of the world. And we have to restore the home of the tadpoles and give back to our children a world of beauty and wonder, which one has been lost for years. We have to restore it. We have to make it again. We have to rebuild the world that we have lost. So I request the world leaders to take much care in this case and work for it. That is the speech delivered by Wangari Maathai in Oslo in 2004. This is her Nobel Prize acceptance speech. So this speech is just this: by preserving the nature, we can get a lot of things. We can get our living, and it helps us improve our life standard, and it helps us keep the peace among the societies. Things like that. A lot of benefits are there, and that's all the speech. And from this speech, you can expect questions related to environmental issues and the solutions, and the role of trees, and what is the importance of preserving water bodies and natural trees and things like this. Okay, so for examination, exams related to environmental may be asked from this, and most probably general topic, right? So this is very simple. As it is a speech, it is easy to understand. You will have to read it once or twice, read it carefully and understand about the movement she started, and who participated in it, what were the challenges faced by her in the beginning and how it changed later. Things like this can be studied from this chapter. Okay, I hope you understood this chapter. Study well, read it once or twice after listening to this video. It will help you to retain what you have read for your examination. That's all from my part for now. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.